Welcome back, Freedom Fighters. It's Kasim, and this might be the most ambitious thing I've ever tried to teach. So I'm going to ask you to bear with me, and I'd love your feedback. So hit me in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'm calling this the Evolution Engine. This is my newest framework, the Evolution Engine, and the idea is that we're going to build freedom through diversification. And this is actually counter to the conventional thesis of building freedom through optimization. I believe at this point in time, trying to optimize our business, meaning trying to tweak little things and make things a little bit better every time, is moving us towards obsolescence. Let me explain what I mean. Here's some advice that used to be really sound. Things like niche down. Focus, right? Focus. Pay attention to singular things. Don't dilute your energy. The question I have for you is, are we in a conventional time? And the answer is obviously not. Obviously not. And I actually believe that this advice is, I believe it's not only dangerous, I actually think that it's deadly. I think it forces you into something of a chosen existential crisis. Let me defend that positioning. So, in order to do that, I need to explain what I believe to be the old framework for innovation. This is the old framework for innovation. Innovation starts with experimentation, which is what you see here. And experimentation is messy, and it's incongruent, and it's expensive. And experimentation is really meant for inventors, right? It's meant for explorers. It's not necessarily an entrepreneurial endeavor. It's more of a scientific endeavor. It's trying to figure new things out. And, Edison's famous quote of, "I found the 10,000 ways it didn't work." That's experimentation. It's messy. It has sharp edges. It's not for everybody. It's definitely not profitable. Once we've achieved proof of concept, then you start to see people move in and they begin to create what we are going to consider to be stability. Meaning we've not just proven concept, we're now able to replicate this on a recurring basis. Now, they've been able to achieve stability to a degree to where it's now accessible to a broader group of people, right? Experimentation is just for the inventors. It's for the 1%. Proof of concept might be for the 5%. Stability is maybe for the early adopters, right? It's the 10%. It's still difficult. As far as shapes go, the hexagon isn't necessarily the easiest to draw, but you can start to see how this is getting more and more accessible and easier to grasp. From stability, we move into education. So we move from new innovation being discovered through experimentation, establishing proof of concept, creating stability, and with stability comes the process of passing that new innovation down to other people. So we're going to educate the broader masses on this new innovation. Education now, just about anybody can do it, right? Just about anybody can do it as long as they spend the time and are willing to, approach the process the way that is being taught. And then commoditization is now easy. Commoditization is easy. From commoditization, we move into ubiquity, where it's just available to and for everyone. The easiest, most accessible example of this, by the way, is websites. Everybody has a website and they're easy. Just about anybody can figure it out. My 10-year-old can build a website. Straight into where we are now, which is ubiquity. You can build a website in a matter of seconds from a prompt. That's a fact. So we moved from experimentation to ubiquity. Now, here's the thing to understand from an innovation perspective. Monetization applied to innovation looks like this. This is your classic bell curve. Monetization opportunity peaks between stability and education. It peaks right after we've reached critical mass with stability. It's like, okay, we know how this is done, and the people that are willing to do this work are going to profit the most. Going back to our website example, people that were willing to build websites during this difficult period were the ones that took the foothold of the internet, right? This is the Craigslist of the world. Craigslist wasn't an innovative website per se, but it was built at a very innovative time. And so now the classified ads of the world live on Craigslist, which I actually think is a really good example of perfect timing, not necessarily perfect innovation. So perfect timing on the innovation timeline. Now, monetization opportunity drops with education. Why? It's actually a natural byproduct. One follows the other. When people, experts, begin to see a decrease in the opportunity to monetize the endeavor, they begin teaching the endeavor instead of doing it. So as soon as I realize, man, I'm going to make less money digging for gold than I am teaching people to dig for gold, I'm going to move into teaching people to dig for gold. And education is where the precipitous drop comes, because now you have a market rush into an industry. And then there's a drop with commoditization is where the opportunity to really profit from that endeavor ends. Now, can you still make money building websites? Technically, yes, and not anything basic, right? I would argue that Any website that you're going to make money building is probably going to really be a software application hosted on the web, not necessarily a basic website. And feel free to, again, argue with me if you want to argue that particular example. But what I'd ask you to do is just zoom out and look at the framework that I'm positing here. And this is true of all innovation. And then from commoditization, we move into ubiquity. Now, ubiquity doesn't mean that it's without value. It doesn't mean that it's without value. Let's suspend disbelief with me for just a moment as I keep going. This is the old model of innovation. The old model of innovation starts with experimentation, moves to proof of concept, moves to stability, moves to education, moves to commoditization, moves to ubiquity. And this has been every innovation since the beginning of time, which is, I imagine, fire and language, right? Experimentation, proof of concept, stability, education, commoditization, ubiquity. Now, here's the new framework for innovation. This is what just happened to us. The new framework for innovation looks like this. Experimentation is exactly what it was. It's an isolated endeavor being undertaken by people who are in search of something new, not necessarily in search of a profit-yielding endeavor, although I expect that'll change. Then we achieve proof of concept. And immediately after achieving proof of concept, we move into stability, education, and commoditization, and they happen almost at the exact same time. There's still a little bit of a bevel, but you're going to start to see that adjust too, to where the minute we've achieved proof of concept, bam. And why is this happening? It's because we have these trillion-dollar supercomputers that are grasping things conceptually instantly and then moving into a position of disbursement that's accelerating the time to life that we are used to by a factor that's difficult for me to hyperbolize. Media buying in the new framework of innovation experienced this. Suddenly we had AI-driven mechanisms that would, for example, measure attribution. So these AI tools would say, oh, we know what campaigns are working for what purpose, and so they would optimize those campaigns in a matter of time that might have previously taken weeks, months, or even years. They were able to do in days or hours. And that created this hyper fast flywheel of, experimenting with the attribution, achieving proof of concept. And suddenly we moved into a stability, education, commoditization, to where everybody is forced to adopt this new process, or they just fell off the map, which, by the way, happened a lot. People don't realize how few customers Google has. Google is one of the most profitable businesses on the planet, and they have less than 1 million active recurring customers within the Google Ads ecosystem. And that number, believe it or not, is dropping. The number of people advertising on Google is decreasing, while the amount of money Google is making is increasing, which is a pretty scary place to be for Google. And it's because of this system. They don't necessarily want that. They'd much rather diversify their client base, obviously. And as advertisers get more effective, the bar rises and it burns off ineffectual advertisers. So this is the new system of innovation. And this is happening with everything. It's happening with everything, to where another really good example is going to be image generation. This is the new framework for innovation as far as I see it. Now, what does that mean from a monetization perspective? This is the bell curve. You'll notice that the bell curve, first of all, looks a little wonky. This is the entrepreneurial endeavor, is moving from experimentation to proof of concept, and then learning to capitalize on proof of concept in a way that allows you to get in while it's profitable and get out. Don't be too dedicated. Don't be too committed to how you make your money. And this is going to be the hardest thing for us to learn. This is why, going back to the thesis that I offered in the beginning, things like focus, choosing your one thing, niching down. I actually think in this new economy, I think that's going to hurt us, not help us. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that. So bear with me. There's a book that is an amazing read. Imad Mustaq, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but he's the CEO of Stability AI, which was one of the companies behind Stable Diffusion. I think this is required reading. It's a very, very, very fast read. So this is the first big block of what it is that I believe needs to be understood in order to really grasp this framework, the evolution of entrepreneurship. But it's not just about AI. And that's what's really difficult, I think, for a lot of us, because AI is, it's the big bad wolf. It's all anybody's talking about. It's what we're all afraid of. And so it's really easy to get myopic in scope. It's not just AI. Regulation, and those two things are going to bounce off of each other. You're going to see governments and legislative bodies and even small municipalities, interestingly, are trying to control the impact AI is having on them. And so there's this weird tension between AI and regulation, but regulation also stands alone as its own problem to contend with, especially from a business perspective. I'm really excited about. I think it's good for humanity, and it's a massive problem. It's a massive problem because if you rely on a centralized entity and and then whatever resource, asset, or provision that entity is responsible for becomes decentralized, anything leaning up against that entity will topple along with the entity. So consumer behavior is changing dramatically for all of these reasons and because of its unto itself. And then the global talent pool, globalization, the world being flat, among others. Those are the big ones that I wanted to posit. But all of these things are coming into play. And if you want to really spend some time, this is maybe the most important book that I read as it pertains to how to prepare for this new economy. And the book is old, incidentally. Nassim Nicholas Taleb is absolutely brilliant. He's also a little obnoxious to read because he's so full of himself. I'm pretty sure he starts the book talking about how he's built like a linebacker and could beat up any investment banker. Like, he's just kind of a weird guy, but he's a literal genius. You know, he can afford to be a little arrogant because he deserves it. He might be one of the smartest humans alive. And he has this concept called antifragility. This was written way before AI was a realistic and obvious player, and yet it applies so perfectly. It's like he told the future. So again, I know I'm giving you a lot of reading. It's worth it. It's worth, I mean, some of these people they're just beautiful minds. Here's my thesis. Generalists will inherit the earth, which is a strange thing to say in a world that favors specialists and has favored specialists for the entire length of, I mean, not just industrialization. You go back to like any agrarian economy, people who really focus on one skill set, generally speaking, for the last, 2,000 years of humanity, it tend to do better within closed ecosystems. Generalists will inherit the earth as long as they can create the systems that allow for specialization. So it's not that specialization is going away. Think about the framework of innovation. It's not that it's going away. It's that it's going to be ubiquitously available. We are going to have, and not just going, y'all, this is the craziest part. This is the thing that blows my mind. This is why Imad's book is just required reading. We already have these, I call them $1 trillion supercomputers, but that's my attempt at articulating their importance, and it doesn't do it because they're more than that. They're more valuable than that. We have these $1 trillion supercomputers, these ultra intelligent agentic beings that will do your bidding. They're the specialists. So they're removing the need for human specialization, which is in a lot of ways terrifying. These tools beat humanity at every intellectual specialty within which they've achieved proof of concept. So think about the framework for innovation. Look at radiology. Radiology is a high-end skill set. It's $400,000 a year for some radiologists at a high level. AI beats radiologists 1,001 times out of 1,000. Right? Like every single time, without an exception, AI is going to beat a radiologist. And any exception you bring up is going to be the exception that proves the rule. It's like the self-driving car that was driving behind the truck that had a landscape and sky painted on the back of it, and it ran into the truck. I don't know if you read that story, but it was funny because even that as an articulation of the danger of self-driving cars was really an example of why the AI's prowess was so much higher and better than a human, because the accident threshold and ratio goes to almost literal zero unless you go out of your way to try to fool the AI into running into you, in which case it will follow the instructions in a way that a human couldn't or wouldn't. Is now available to us in a way that allows for creative endeavors that, to be honest with you, are, I want to say, imponderable, because we're not going to know what to do with them until we play with them. So it's going to take you and me in the experimentation phase, moving into proof of concept. But the reason experimentation used to be so costly was because specialization was costly. Now that specialization is free, and it's effectively free, like the AI tokens are effectively free given what you're getting. Imagine what it used to cost to have 1,000 PhDs on call. That's about what you have with these new tools, right? You have 1,000 PhDs on call with research staffs and support staff that, build things along the periphery. And they're only going to get more effective and cheaper, which continues to be true. So I believe that generalists will inherit the earth. But in order to do so, generalists need to create the systems that allow for specialization. Let's talk about what that really means. I'd like to talk about the evolution of survival. So if we want to know how to survive this new ecosystem, which, by the way, is changing more rapidly than anybody can wrap their mind around, and the closer you are to the technological innovation, the more this is true. So when you listen to these people that are, literally at ground zero of the creation of these things, they're the ones that are most surprised and least confident about, guessing at what's coming into the future. So let's look to nature for a moment for a signal as to how to survive this type of environment. Because while AI is new to humanity, changing environments are not new to nature. And everything, what is it they say, that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes? Let's look at the rhyme. So there's something called an R-selected species. This is a type of animal who's evolved in unstable or unpredictable environments with high predation rates. R-selected species typically, interestingly, have shorter lifespans. That's why I said don't get romantic about how you make your money. They mature quickly and are well suited for unstable or unpredictable environments because they can rapidly exploit resources and colonize new habitats. So let's think about that from a business perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective. This is what an R-selected species looks like, right? They're also called R-strategists if you want to research this anymore, dive down the rabbit hole on Wikipedia. These are organisms that prioritize reproduction and growth rates above pretty much all else. So they end up having shorter lifespans. Maybe they're not as, robust or as intelligent, or, their societies aren't necessarily as advanced, but they breed, they create because they are constantly being taken out, right? Unstable, unpredictable, high predation rates, but they breed so quickly that even though they're being taken out at exorbitant rates, they still survive and they still grow and they still proliferate. That's in our selected species. I actually believe that's the framework for survival in this new economy. This is the survival curve. If you look at specialists, there's an inverse ratio between a specialist and the ability to adapt. And the ability to adapt is the key skill set to survival in this new world that we're in. So the survival curve is built against specialists and built for generalists. That's number one. Number two is optionality, which is something Nassim Nicholas Taleb talks about all the time. Optionality becomes the primary mechanism of survival. You need to have, if there's a viper in your room, you need to have a way out, preferably 8, 9, or 10 of them. Because in this world where there are more predators than you know of, if you open one door and there's a predator behind that door, you want to be able to go to another. So optionality becomes the primary mechanism of survival. It's not, and this is actually what's really scary. This is, it's funny, I'm coming to this conclusion as I'm talking to you. A person who creates a lot of random, let's say semi-random options, I think is going to be better off than a person who thinks really hard and creates 1 or 2 or 3. I actually think intelligence in this, and this is a dangerous thing to say, so just allow me to protect myself as I find my way. Intelligence can work against you because we're not going to be able to, it's like trying to outsmart the market. Every time I've ever tried to outsmart the market, I lose because they're just people smarter than me, right? So the only way you can outsmart the market is if you were literally the smartest person playing the market, which is statistically very, very, very unlikely. I'm sure you have a higher statistical probability of winning the lot. Trying to outsmart the future, which unto itself becomes kind of a self-fulfilling or self-unfulfilling prophecy, because anybody who does guess what's going to happen in so guessing could potentially keep that thing from happening. Does that make sense? Trying to outsmart the future, I don't think is as viable a strategy as just creating a ton of exit opportunities, as long as they're at least semi-viable. So I think a C- student who just ships is going to be way better off than an A+ student who is trying to create intelligently but isn't allowing themselves to hit the publish button. And then the D and F students are just gonna die, which really probably means they're gonna go home and get paid universal basic income to watch Netflix. So the 3 layers of the evolution engine. Layer number 1, the survival curve. And the survival curve, remember, requires fast adaptation, which specialists are not capable by literal definition of fast adaptation because they specialize in a very specific realm. Fast adaptation. Layer number 2, optionality. You have to have a lot of options, which, by the way, those 2 things feel very close to each other, don't they? And layer number 3 is having an engine that allows for these things because you want to be able to do them at scale. Don't love the word scale because of the way that it's been bastardized. But if your expectation is you're going to be able to create optionality and adapt quickly without building and codifying that, that's going to be a very exhausting life. You are going to be, kind of like a deer in hunting season, just not sleeping a lot, losing weight, erotic as all hell, constantly looking over your shoulder. This is going to be a very difficult thing to do without an engine. The good news is we can create the engine and we can use these tools that are being given to us to create the engine on our behalf. And the engine, incidentally, it looks something like this. So the very first thing you need to do is the thing that you're currently doing, by the way. Congrats. You're doing this better than anybody else on the planet. Adjusted for margin of error, 0% of people are thinking about this right now. You are aware. You're aware. Be aware. That's number one. Number two is experiment. And this might be, if you take nothing else away from this video, this is really the new key now. You can't wait for innovation if you want to survive. And by survive, by the way, actually, I don't think that anybody's going to die or starve, but I do think a lot of people are going to be sat down on the bleachers, and that probably, again, means that we're moving to some weird, hopefully utopian socialistic society where everybody just gets paid to stay at home. And you might say like, oh, Kasim, I'm not a fan of that. I'm a libertarian. Great. Show me the other option. But if you want to stay in the game, if you still want to have a business, if you want to play, if you want to be master of your own destiny, if you don't want to be at the mercy of, government check writer, experiment. Right now, that really just means talk to ChatGPT, right? If you're a stonemason, talk to ChatGPT about how do I make my business more efficient? And that could be on every level of analysis, from customer acquisition to fulfillment to product ordering to inventory management. I don't care. Experiment with these tools. From experimentation, move to delegation. Why? Because you are one human. And what's interesting about this leverageable endeavor is one human is able to, let's say, agentify 1,000 thoughts. Well, what happens if you have two humans? And what's interesting about that is if one human is 1,000 thoughts, two humans isn't 2,000 thoughts, because they compound, right? The work done under a single umbrella compounds. And so it might be 1,000,000, and so on and so forth. And we're going to talk a lot about this in this lesson. So I'll just leave the delegation piece to expound upon in a moment. From delegation, you move in automation. Automation's not done or dead. As a matter of fact, I think it's more important now than ever. Automate what works, but we need to make sure we're always going back to it, review it. Automation is one of our greatest tools and also one of the greatest risks. And then, of course, and this is part of the monitoring, step 5 is culling. When you cull the herd, you kill off what doesn't work. You allow for evolution. So these are the 3 layers of the evolution engine. These are the 5 steps to the evolution. Think about this as tectonic plates shifting, which is the analogy a lot of people continue to draw upon in this world is, it's a tectonic shift. It's a tectonic shift. Great. The thing about tectonic shifts is you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if where you're standing now ends up being the high ground, which could be great. You don't know if it ends up being the low ground, which would be horrible. You don't know if it ends up being above water, below water. You don't know if there's an explosion coming. We don't know what happens with tectonic shifts. So the idea, if you know that there are tectonic shifts, is to diversify your placements. It's to have lots of little land masses, lots of little footholds in lots of different places, a diversity of locations. And the tectonic shift, again, it's not just AI. There are multiple tectonic shifts taking place all at once. Maybe AI was the catalyst, but we're talking about entire industries, markets, technologies, and the unknown. There's a bunch of stuff happening that we just don't know about. They're constantly teasing World War III and nuclear holocaust and just all these things. There's just things that we don't know. And I don't want to make this trying to scare anybody, but the unknown is the unknown, and the unknown is scary for a reason. So these tectonic shifts, distinctly, are the biggest. It's the biggest entrepreneurial opportunity I've seen in my entire life. Seen or I've ever read about or heard about. The key is you cannot predict which plates end up above water and which plates end up below water. So my advice to you, and this is what I'm doing, by the way, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, build multiple vessels. Build multiple vessels. So you want to build multiple vessels, right? Like if you have a fleet of ships, you're so much more likely to survive a storm than if you have one battleship and you put all your eggs in that basket. You want to build multiple vessels, and then you want to monitor those vessels and see how they're performing as the ecosystem moves. So let's talk about that. My goal at this moment is to create self-sustaining micro businesses that can ride whatever wave comes up. That's what I'm currently doing, and that's what I'd encourage you to do. Now, micro businesses, this doesn't mean you have to create multiple businesses. I have, and the thesis stands within the confines of one business. Within the confines of one business, you might just create different lines of businesses. You want to take your business, and under the umbrella of your business, you want to begin to build additional lines. Now, again, this flies in the face of conventional wisdom. Maybe it will be again at some point in the future. But at the moment, given the state of where we see ourselves, what's happening, and what's on the horizon, I think diversification just became the most important survival mechanism. Let's be our selected species. How do you be in our selected species from an entrepreneurial perspective? You have lots of little business babies, right? Lots of little business babies. If you don't have ships in the water when the tides change, you're just watching opportunity sail by. That's the other thing. That's really interesting. Having multiple ships in the water, does it diversify? Yes, absolutely it does. But it also equips you to seize opportunities as they come. These opportunities move so quickly that if you don't already have a ship in the water, you can't ride that wave. The waves are moving too fast. So we need to have a diversification strategy that allows you to be equipped to seize opportunities as they approach. Here's what this engine looks like. I think you should have something like a weekly mutation meeting. This could be just with yourself, by the way, or it could be with your staff. This doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be arduous. You don't even need to necessarily call it this. But the question really is just, is what we're doing now working? And what might we do in the future that could work also? That's it. From a weekly perspective, I don't think this even needs to be massively formalized. If you wanted this to be a quick Slack conversation, or a Socratic GPT conversation, you could absolutely do that. But you need to keep your eye on the mechanism that is your business, because things are changing that quickly. Weekly is a great cadence. If you wanted to do it daily, you could. Probably not necessary. I think weekly is great. From there, I would recommend strongly a quarterly evolution review. Look at your business on a quarter-by-quarter basis and take a look at what's really working, what's not. And again, don't get romantic about how you make your money. Do not get romantic about how you're making money. There's going to be some things that you do that just aren't working anymore. And it's better for you to see that and get out ahead of it than to bury your head in the sand, which is what a lot of people do. I'd also strongly recommend having something like an evolution dashboard. What does that mean, strictly speaking? It's looking at the predictors of health in sterile terms on a recurring basis. Predictors of health are all the usual suspects. New business is a very strong predictor of health. It might be one of the strongest predictors of health, all other things being equal. If more people are coming to you, that means that you probably have a longer time horizon than if it's the same or less, right? So new business, retained clients, great predictor of health. Are people staying? Are more people coming? Great. Are people staying? Increase value per client, great predictor of health. Again, usual suspects. I'm not here to teach you business metrics per se. We'll do that in another framework. But that which is measured is managed. So measure the things that you know are important to measure. I would recommend building what I'm going to call your optionality map. So if what Nassim Nicholas Taleb said is true, and I believe it to be true, optionality can be built into the engine of your business. And here's how you can do it. I'm using the number 3, by the way, just because it's accessible and it's not overwhelming. 3 could be 30 and 30 could be 3,000. Look at every single asset that you currently have. Every single asset. So this is every person, every line of business, every piece of equipment, every offering, every asset, and start to ask yourself, can I repurpose this? Can I replicate this? Can I expand this? Where else could this possibly go? Try to come up with 3 ways that this asset, the same way I just did with the bookkeeping business, that this asset could be repurposed, replicated, expanded. Look at every asset. Look at every channel through which you do business. I get all my business through meta ads. Great. Could you expand to Google, Snapchat, Reddit? Right? Look at every channel. I do a lot in organic. I do a lot of networking. I do a lot of outbound. I do a lot of inbound. I do a lot of cold calls. I do a lot of LinkedIn messaging. I hate all you LinkedIn messengers, by the way. God bless you. Look at every channel through which you do business and ask yourself, can I amplify those channels? And what about those channels can I automate? Which I think, by the way, I think that might be the most ripe and potent opportunity for automation. Look at every potential change on the horizon that you feel better equipped to understand from an expertise perspective. So I had a Google Ads agency, which means when I saw a change in media buying, I was better equipped to understand those ideas than somebody who wasn't a professional media buyer. Be on the horizon for new ideas. Keep your finger to the pulse. You can't wait for the market to inform you. New ideas, new innovations, new softwares, new technologies, new approaches, new markets. You have to be there and you have to test them. Find 3 things to kill. What are 3 things that we're doing that aren't working or aren't going to work soon or are just an absolute waste of time? I promise you there's more than 3. There's a lot of things in your business you just should not be doing. Find 3 assets, find 3 channels, find 3 ideas, find 3 things. Repurpose, automate, test, and kill. This is the optionality map. This is how you continue to experiment in a way that still allows you to run your business and not fly off the map. Ask yourself these questions. And this can happen in your weekly or quarterly reviews, depending on how aggressive you want to be. The first question is, if the world changed tomorrow, what single dependency would kill you? The way to think about this is bottlenecks. What bottleneck in your business would kill you if exploited, broken, or otherwise taken out? Could be any number of things like a key employee or dependency on a market or dependency on a product or dependency on a referral partner. If the world changed tomorrow, what single dependency would kill you? And if you're not sure how to answer this question, go look at other businesses that have died. Go look at other businesses in your industry that have died. That's question number 1. Question number 2, what would happen if your number 1, insert any asset here? What would happen if your number 1 offer, number 1 employee, number 1 platform, etc. disappeared? Again, let's go back. Go back to the optionality map. That's why I want you to think about your assets in a way that allow them to be repurposed. All of those things that I just mentioned, your offer, your employees, your platforms, those are all assets. This is why we're trying to find ways to repurpose assets. The inverse test of this is, what would happen if those things disappeared? If you only sell one thing, go back to the bookkeeping example. All you do is bookkeeping. What happens when AI really does get better at bookkeeping than you? What do you do? Where do you go? What's the optionality for you at that point? You know, that viper is basically on you now. What do you have any exit routes? And the third question, which is the hardest to answer and the most important, how fast could you evolve? And it's not just you, it's how fast could your enterprise evolve? Are your employees the type of people that can actually move and learn new things? And if not, are those the right employees? Or your partners, or your strategic alliances, whoever it might be, the network within which you exist. How fast can it evolve? This Munger inversion test, I think, is one of the most important things you can do in an environment like this. This is also the type of thing that can be really overwhelming. So feel free to reserve this quarterly. Again, it depends on your business. I hesitate to give you hard and fast rules like this should be done every week and this should be done every quarter, because every business is different. And that's your job as an entrepreneur. Take these tools and decide which tool is most applicable for my business and when. What's the cadence? Okay, let's talk about how to do this at scale. How to do this at scale and how to do this in a way that it doesn't feel so overwhelming like you're alone. And the first thing I'd like to posit is the concept of OPM, which you probably have heard of. Most people in the entrepreneurial space have heard of other people's money. And this, by the way, is the way that all the wealthiest people in the world have built their wealth. This is how and why hedge funds exist. Other people's money. You use other people's money to grow, invest, experiment, etc. OPM. Here's what is available to us, and not just available to us to a greater degree, but I think we are better positioned to use and to leverage. It's the same concept, different resource. Instead of other people's money, I want you to think about other people's time. You right now, chances are, statistically speaking, the sole decision maker in your business, and if you have a business partner, let's say there's two of you, congratulations, you've increased your optionality by 1. But everything that I've just shared is entirely and completely up to you. And that should feel and be a little overwhelming, because it is. What I'm going to ask you to do is to diversify. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not just diversifying assets or channels or testing. Diversify yourself through others. You can use other people's time to scale the competence that exists within your organization. So OPM lets you scale capital. OPT lets you scale competence. Other people's time. But in order to do that, you have to have competent people, right? To scale competence, the presupposition is you have competent people. I think you need to build a world-class pipeline of talent. I think you need a world-class pipeline of talent, because in this diversification endeavor that we're discussing, you're not going to be able to do it alone. It's too hard. There's too many variables. And what's interesting, as I mentioned earlier, this compounds. So if one person can agentify 1,000 ideas, the wrong way to think about it is, oh, well, then two people can agentify 2,000 ideas. If one person can agentify 1,000 ideas, then two people can agentify 1,000,000 ideas. And then what can three people agentify? And the reason for that is because there's compounding effects to these endeavors that we're taking. And the endeavors learn from each other. There are network effects too. So if everything's waiting on you, if your whole business is hub and spoke, if it's built like a pyramid and you're the pharaoh at the top, everything underneath you is dependent on your abilities. Terrifying place to be. It's a terrifying place to be. Instead, inverse the pyramid. Put everybody in a position of being one of those agents, and that will amplify all the other agents' endeavors, because what those people learn feeds you and it feeds the others. I hope that makes sense. There's this symbiosis that's happening, and the symbiosis is going to be more potent the more potent the people are. So I think you should have a pipeline of world-class talent. I think you should bring people into your fold and just throw ideas at them and then let them self-organize. And that's the hardest part, by the way. Entrepreneurs aren't used to this. They're used to saying like, oh, I need a graphic designer. I'm going to hire a graphic designer. Oh, I need a heart surgeon. I'm going to hire a heart surgeon. The issue with that is those are conversations of commodity. Remember what I said earlier about specialization. Those specialists we have. What you want are really world-class generalists that can help you begin to diversify according to this thesis that I've just posited. And those are profitable micro ventures. And again, that can happen within the confines of your business. It can happen, you could build multiple businesses. I'm going to show you how I do it specifically. My very strong opinion is you need to stop being a founder. Founders are pharaohs. They're kings. They're the leaders of the serfdom. Build an ecosystem. And again, just to reinforce this can be done within your company. I'm not asking you to go start other organizations, but I am saying we need to put our people in the position of being change agents. We need to agentify our people. We've agentified our technology. Isn't that crazy? We've agentified our technology, but we haven't agentified our people. We need to agentify our people. This is how this is done. You build a talent pipeline. You build a pipeline for extraordinary talent. And incidentally, I've given this to you for free. I have a staffing agency that places world-class talent with people, and the entire blueprint for that agency is yours for free. Go to thehireBook.com. You get the book, the workbook, the cheat sheet, all the templates, a global job board. I'm not trying to sell you my staffing agency. I'm giving you the standard operating procedure for creating your own. And most importantly, interestingly, if you need certain types of talent, be that in specific geographies or with specific skill sets or backgrounds or whatever, you're going to be better off building your own than you are coming to me. So I don't have a dog in this fight outside of the fact that I think this is the best way to do it. As a matter of fact, that could be a hint as to why I have a staffing agency in the first place. This is exactly what I do. I have a pipeline of extraordinary talent, and I take those extraordinary people and then I put them in positions of creating assets for me that allow me greater degrees of optionality. So this is your goal. I want you to build autonomous talent. Everybody's talking about autonomous agents. I think you should have autonomous talent, and that talent needs to run their own business units under your umbrella. That doesn't mean you're launching all sorts of new businesses necessarily. That means that everybody that comes and works for you runs their own thing. That's autonomous business talent. You need that too. Within your business, outside of your business, you need autonomous talent. Autonomous talent. Don't build businesses, build builders. How many businesses can you build? Reasonably, aggressively, unreasonably. But what if you had business builders under you? What if you had people in your business that were also building? That's what you want. So this relies very heavily on something called the 262 framework. If you took my delegation training, I leaned really heavily into this. If you haven't, I'll give you the cursory overview, and then you can go take the delegation training, which exists inside of my free forever community. Just go to learn.3xfreedom.com. 262. You're going to hire somebody. And remember, you're hiring generalists, not specialists, which means you don't necessarily know what they're good at. This is against all conventional wisdom. And I think it's the smartest thing for entrepreneurs to do right now. You're going to hire somebody and you're going to give them 10 things to do. Okay? This is the 262 framework. 2, 6, and 2. You're going to give them 10 things to do. They're going to suck at 2 of them. They're just not going to do them well. You're not going to be happy with their output. They're going to do 6 just fine. Good job. Check the box. Well done. And then they're going to do 2 better than any human alive. Now, here's what you've been taught from an entrepreneurial perspective, and I don't know why. You've been taught to go focus on the 2 things they suck at. And then you say, don't worry, we're going to get you there, kid, and we're going to give you a performance improvement program, and I'm going to buy a bunch of training, and you can shadow Sally because she's already so good at her job. Why don't we slow her down, right? It's the wrong way to do it in this environment. We're moving fast. We're nimble. We're our selected species. Those 2 things they suck at, you just don't ask them to do it again, right? Instead, you go index towards the 2 things that they're extraordinary at. I found this guy, Camillo, brilliant entrepreneur, really crushed the podcast game. Now, is that the only thing he's good at? Definitely not. Is that where we're going to stop? Nope. But guess what I now have within the confines of my business? I have podcast production agency, and I can choose to use that however I want. I can use that within my businesses. I can use that outside of my businesses because I played the 262 game with Camillo. I figured out what he wasn't good at. I figured out what he was good at. That's the 262 framework. You need to bring on extraordinary talent, and then you need to play the 262 game. Now, here are my rules. These are my rules. Every business or business line must ultimately pay for itself unless I have a very strong reason in investing in it. And I actually have 2 of those that I'll share with you. Every business line must pay for itself. I want to be able to cross-pollinate between entities. So I own multiple businesses. I have Camillo who does podcast production, and I have multiple businesses now that all have podcasts produced by Camillo. What does that mean? I don't have redundant overhead. I don't have redundant software. I get to really, commoditize the utilization of his time. If we do need to hire somebody else, that person gets to cross-pollinate between all business entities. I get to maximize the potential and the value of this business line. And again, this can happen within the confines of your one business, incidentally. And I remove redundancies. I don't want the same people doing the same thing, right? Also be ready for roll-ups and split downs. Here's what that means. Not everything you build is going to work. We're our selected species. Remember, short lifespans in a lot of instances. And this is really frustrating to build things that die. It's frustrating for you. It's frustrating for employees. It's just the reality of the ecosystem. There might be, you build 2 business lines that get combined into 1. You build 1 business line that gets split into 2. Be ready for evolution. Here are the new rules of evolutionary entrepreneurship. That's what I want to teach you. Evolutionary entrepreneurship. If you're going to do this, you can do this with additional business lines. You can do this with business lines within the confines of your current business, but you have to follow these rules. Rule number 1, all lines are talent-led. That means what? You don't do the work. It's who, not how. Classic Dan Sullivan. You go find somebody smarter than you, and you cut them loose. And if they do great, great. They belong there. If they don't, cut them. Get rid of them. I'm not here to manage people. I'm not here to coerce you, cajole you. I don't do, 90-day check-ins and performance reviews. I expect to hire miracles. I pay them more than they'd ever make domestically. I give them meaningful work. I let them work on a semi-flexible schedule from anywhere in the world. And then they play sink or swim. And the amount of extraordinary talent available, it will blow your mind. Go read my book. I wrote the best book on hiring anybody's ever written. And there's the rule behind the Pareto distribution is impossible to ignore once you really understand the math of it. People are the most important key differentiator in today, and especially with technology being as commoditized as it is. You have to have talent-led organizations. You have to have talent-led organizations. That's a fact. And if you want to fight me on that, you're gonna find yourself sorely disappointed at the end of this fight. You need to solve for traffic first and foremost. Traffic is the most expensive part of business. I have an entire framework in Q called the Traffic First Framework, so keep your eyes peeled for that. If you're not a part of my Free Forever community, by the way, just go to the number 3, the letter X, freedom.com, 3xfreedom.com, join the community. All of my content is solving for traffic first puts you in a position of solving the most important business question before you build a great big skyscraper only to find out you're on an island that nobody will visit, which is what most people do, by the way. Solve for traffic first. Know where your customers are going to come from. The best way to do this, by the way, is community, yours or somebody else's. But there's a bunch of ways, and I'll dive much deeper into that in the traffic first framework. I want to talk to you about the entrepreneurial batting cage. Business is iterative. All business is iterative. Here's what that means. Everything about your business gets better the more often it happens, right? It's like any engine that really needs to come together. You need the wheels to turn. And as they turn, it gets better and it gets more efficient. It's almost reverse entropy. Everything about your business gets better with iteration. The problem is people tend not to put themselves in an iterative environment. This is why I say solve for traffic first. Imagine for a moment, you're a young man or woman and you want to learn how to bat in baseball. I don't know how to bat, by the way. You probably just saw that, but it's a good analogy. You want to learn how to bat. So option 1 is you go start knocking on doors in your neighborhood. You got a bat, you got a ball, and you go and you knock on a door and you wait to see if somebody answers. And if they answer, you ask, hey, would you mind running down to the park with me and throwing a ball? And if they don't answer, you go to the next door. How many knocks until somebody answers? I don't know, right? Let's say it's 10, could be 100, could be 5. Doesn't matter, because how many people need to answer before somebody agrees to walk down to the park with you? Again, I don't know. Could be 10, could be 100, could be 5. Doesn't matter, because when that person walks down to the park with you and they throw a ball and you swing, hit or miss, they're going home, and then you have to start knocking doors again, right? How long is it going to take for you to learn to bat? 1 billion years at that rate. Or you go to the batting cage and you have a machine throwing balls at you. Swing, 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 hit or miss. Balls keep going. Over time, what's going to happen? You're going to learn to bat. This needs to be true for every facet of your business. This is where evolution comes from. If you're not in a batting cage from a business perspective, you can't experiment. You can't evolve. You can't try new things. You can't see what's working. You can't see what's not. And every facet of your business has to be on this flywheel. This is why I want you to solve for traffic first. Traffic, in so many ways, that's the ball. It's not the only one, right? But that's the ball. That's what allows your business to be iterative. And so solving for traffic first puts you in the batting cage and lets you see things like, how does my marketing work? How does my sales work? How do my offers work? Are they working effectively? My onboarding, my fulfillment, my ascension, my customer service, my finance team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't have a business that's in a batting cage, stop working on everything else. Solve for traffic. Solve for traffic. And if you can't solve for traffic, get out of that business. And you're like, oh gosh, Kasim, that's a pretty aggressive opinion. Yeah, I spent $100 million of other people's money for years. If you can't solve for traffic, you will go out of business. Traffic is the lifeblood of business. You want to be in a batting cage, go solve for traffic. Fail fast and fail often. I have another analogy for you. This is the driving range. Most people play business the way they play golf. I'm not a golfer, by the way. It's just a good analogy. If you take golf, there's 18 holes on a golf course. Let's say every hole is par 4. That's 72 swings. You have 72 swings to play a game of golf. And what's interesting about that is if you get one swing wrong, ruins your whole game, ruins your entire game. It cascades. It's the lead domino to a horrible game, right? And can you recover? Yes. And you're now racing from behind. And that's how people play business. They think every swing is critically important and it has to be perfect. Every offer, every launch, every new hire, everything that they do needs to be perfect. Otherwise, it throws off their entire game. That's wrong. It's always been wrong, and this new ecosystem doesn't allow for that type of thinking. What you need to think about is being at the driving range. You're not on the golf course. You're at the driving range. In the driving range, if you've been to a good one, if you've been to Top Golf, that little machine rolls a ball at you, you smack it. Rolls a ball, smack. Roll ball, smack. 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 Somebody's going to cut that and make that a meme. That's the way to build your business. Some of the balls you smack, they're not going to go anywhere. You're going to suck. Some of them are going to be holes in one. Here's what's really interesting about the outweighted returns in the entrepreneurial world. If you hit 1,000 balls and you get one hole in one, that could be $1 billion, right? That's what's amazing about this ecosystem that we're in, especially now with the new framework of innovation. You have to fail fast. You have to fail often. You're at the driving range. You're not on a golf course. The hourglass of niching. Again, this is going to be its own framework unto itself, but I'm going to talk to you about it briefly because it's applicable here. At the very beginning of this talk, I said, don't niche down. Starting broad gives you the opportunity of seeing the entire ecosystem, but you can't stay there. You can't stay there because what ends up happening is when you start broad, you realize certain things don't work, right? And there's 3 primary levels of analysis for choosing a niche. There's the service, the offer, there's the demographic, the person, and then there's the geography or the practical realities, let's say, right? That's kind of 3-dimensional, right? The x-axis is the service, the y-axis is the demo, and then the z-axis can be your geo, assuming that geographic niching is possible and available to you. You get to go out and you get to kiss all these frogs along each of those levels of analysis. And as they don't work, you cut them off. And then you narrow down, you narrow down, you narrow down, you narrow down. And then you reach what I call the apex of profitability. And what's really cool about the apex of profitability is from there, you can branch back out. I'll give you an example. I had a full service marketing agency called Solutions 8. And it was called Solutions 8 because I'm an idiot. And I thought I could be good at everything. And so we were offering web design and software and paid ads and organic ads and mobile and video and social and. As you can imagine, that was a very stressful business, but it let me test all these different lines of service against all these different industries, e.g. demographics, in all these different areas. And I started saying like, well, gosh, I can't work with that type of person and I can't work in that industry and I can't work in that area. And slowly, I got down to, well, you know what? I'm just going to focus on marketing. I'm just going to focus on ads. I'm just going to focus on paid ads. I'm just going to focus on paid ads inside of the Google Ads ecosystem. Hyper-specific niche. But here's what happens. When I reach the apex of profitability, if I want to branch back out, I can offer all those services again. I can go back to offering web design. But instead of offering web design generally, I'm offering web design as a Google Ads expert, which means I know from a messaging perspective what to say. I know that site speed is one of the most important things. I know about post-click conversion and tracking and ascension, et cetera, right? That's the hourglass of niching or niching. You start broad, you narrow down, and then you expand back out. This is really important from an experimentation perspective. That's how experimentation works. You have to index towards action. I'm talking to you planners, you annual planners out there, man. You guys blow my mind. I don't know how people survive this. It's funny. It's only the consultants. And it's because that's how the consultants make their money. I've never seen an annual plan survive the first quarter ever, even in the most boring of all businesses. And somebody's going to comment on YouTube and tell me like, no, that's not true. Mine did. And I'm like, okay, fine. Have you though, outside of the comments and the trolls, have you ever seen an annual plan survive the first quarter? That's why I like these 2-week sprints. Move, take action, hit the ball, swing, choose your analogy. It doesn't matter. Index towards action, index towards doing. And when you index towards doing, you put yourself in a position of not just surviving this ecosystem, but being the person that profits from all of these massive changes. Index towards doing, index towards action. Manage your downside risk. Note that I say drugs and pregnancy. I had the opportunity to sit next to a young man at a Joe Dispenza event. He was awesome. I loved him. He was brilliant. He was 19, 20 years old. And he Googled me and figured out that I, built some businesses, made some money. And so he starts picking my brain. And he kept asking me, he's like, all right, well, best advice, number one thing, what do I got to know? And it was so funny because in the moment I realized, I'm like, dude, go out and make every mistake you can possibly make. Be bold with your mistakes. Take huge swings as long as the only thing you need to do, especially when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, is just manage your downside risk. Don't do drugs. Don't develop an addiction. Don't knock somebody up. Don't get knocked up. Just there's these categories of catastrophic error that if you can avoid, you can make as many mistakes as you want to. And in many cases, the mistakes cost you nothing. This is true in the entrepreneurial world. It's especially true when the AI can run around making the mistakes for you in an environment, an ecosystem that costs pennies, literally pennies. So managing your downside risk might mean don't partner with the wrong person. Don't give away equity if you don't need to. Don't invest a ton of money in a speculative environment. Don't go build a bunch of software that you don't need. You don't have to do any of that with, look at vibe coding. Look at what we can generate. Look at everything that's available to you. Don't hire ultra expensive resources. You can manage all of your downside risk. And then you can take as many risks as you want, which is, I don't think, in the entrepreneurial world, we've ever been there before. It's such an amazing luxury. As long as you put yourself in that position, manage your downside. Once that's done, take as many risks as you want and it costs you almost nothing. A question that I have for you, and I have an entire framework built around this too that's coming out soon, is are you really an entrepreneur? As you've gone through this framework, you've either gotten more and more depressed as I've gone, or you've gotten more and more excited. If you've gotten more and more depressed, that might mean that you're not really an entrepreneur, which isn't bad, by the way. It's not a pejorative to say so. Entrepreneurs should be really excited about what it is that I'm sharing. And you know you're an entrepreneur because you want to build the business. You know you're not an entrepreneur if you want to do the thing, right? So if you want to bake cakes, you're not an entrepreneur, you're a baker. If you want to build a bakery, you're an entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur, the only skill you should be working towards is cultivating talent. If you learn how to attract and utilize talent, you don't have to do anything else. That's the take-home message of this entire thing. Bring extraordinary people in. Share this video with them. Tell them, this is what I want you to do. I want you to build new business lines for me. And realize that scale is bad. Why? Because all that scales AI can do. If it scales, AI can do it. You're bringing in people to do the things that don't scale. Bringing in high-quality talent is a non-scalable endeavor. That's to your benefit because everything that scales is ubiquitous, right? In the new framework of innovation. So don't focus on scale. There's people that say like, I'm not going to do it if it doesn't scale. They blow my mind. Scale is bad. That's why they're teaching scale, right? Ben Hardy's, I like Ben a lot. He's running around teaching, I think he owns scaling.com and Dice owns Scalable. And you know, I respect both of those men deeply. And I think it's a flawed thesis. Scale is bad. If it scales, AI can do it. Find what doesn't scale. That's what's profitable. And build to exit. Build to exit doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to sell the business. What it might mean is you're going to allow it to run on itself and then produce mailbox money. But what it has to mean is you're not the one managing, monitoring this business. You have exited. And the only way that you're going to be able to do what I recommended, the only way I'm able to do what I've done, what I've shown you is I have a bunch of businesses that I don't run. I have exited those businesses. Either I've sold them or they have a managing partner or an employee who manages the whole thing. And all I need to do is cash the check, right? You know you own a business when you can leave for 90 days and when you come back, things are more efficient and more profitable. That's how you exit. Build to exit. There's two that are more important than any. Traffic first and talent led. If you can crack those two codes, and let me show you what I mean. So in the Vibe Coding Incubator, I had traffic first through my business partners, and my partners run it. I don't do a thing. Pareto Talent, my business partner is Yvonne Boonin. He and I are 50-50. Pareto, all of the clients came from my network, my mastermind, my speaking, my podcasts. I solve for traffic immediately. I own 50% of the business, and my business partner runs the day-to-day. Techstack.com. Traffic first. We have Perry Belcher as a business partner, the godfather of digital marketing. It's run by the same, and remember what I said about the diversification of your assets. It's run by the same people that are running Pareto, that are running Architects, that are running all my other businesses. And it's still getting up and running. We're still figuring out what this business is. It's profitable, but only mildly so. But we're positioned for the AI implementation. This is one of the ships that I have out on the water waiting for its wave. Driven Mastermind, traffic first, Perry Belcher. Started War Room with Ryan and Roland. When they sunset War Room, Perry had a bunch of people that still wanted to be in a mastermind. X Freedom, traffic first. This is my network. This is the one business you could say I run, but really my EA helps me run it. I don't do anything from day to day. AEO.co, traffic first. I was the world authority in Google Ads. I have all these people that follow me asking about traffic. AEO is such an easy transition from Google Ads to AEO. And it's run by Julian Lopez, who many of you who are in the community know. Architects, traffic first. Yvonne, Nuno, me, we had all of these people who needed higher end technical help than we could fulfill on through Pareto and some of our other businesses, so we built Architects. I don't run it. It's run by the same people. Kevin Buys, traffic first. I'm a Google Ads expert. I was able to crack the code inside of Google Ads. My business partner, Kevin, runs the business. Karasis Investments, traffic first. I know where to go to get high yield distressed assets. So I buy those properties myself. And then I have an amazing property manager named Derek who manages everything for me. Midtown Storage came from Kevin Buys. Bangarang is a traffic business. And my business partner, John Moran, is the world authority in Google Ads. I'm putting my money where my mouth is and it's yielding. It's actually making me money. And I see all of these opportunities. If and when AI implementation really becomes the most important thing for the entire global economy, I have techstack.com. As people need high quality talent, I have paretotalent.com. As the real estate market begins to turn, I have realfairoffer.com. Like I have these business lines and these assets ready and waiting. And the amount of money they cost me is really one remote employee to build. I've managed my downside risk to a point to where, given my socioeconomic status, it's so much more risky for me not to do these things. And then I get to wait and watch. And if I build 10 businesses and one of them yields in this environment, that one could be worth literally billions. Probably, 100 million is more likely, and it'd be hard for me not to make tens of millions on some of these lines of business. And y'all, I'm not special. You can do this too. This is the most innovative time we've ever been in history. But you can't follow conventional wisdom. I love what Nassim Nicholas Taleb. It's not a good idea. I love what Nassim Nicholas Taleb said. It's not a good idea to take a forecast from someone wearing a tie. Right? Don't follow the Ivy League franchisor types. Follow the dropout. AI isn't coming for your job. It's coming for your rigidity. Be nimble, be flexible, be open, change. Focus is for factories. Freedom is for founders. Again, this is the most ambitious thing that I've ever taught. I would love to know how it landed. This is going to come with a whole collection of resources for you to execute on. So if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to join my free forever community. Just go to learn. And you're going to see not only this video, but a community of people built around this type of framework that's there to help you execute on everything that we've learned. And if you have something for me to learn, if you have improvement opportunities for me, if you disagree with what I said, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to learn from you. I really appreciate your time and attention. And I'll see you in the next framework.